As a scientist, I can tell you that Sundays are only 24 hours long. But with NFL Sunday Ticket and YouTube TV, you get every game every Sunday all in one place. That's upwards of 30 hours of NFL in one day. How can there be 30 hours in 24 hours, you ask? I have a theory. Magic. New users get NFL Sunday Ticket for 8 payments of $34.50 per month. Sign up at NFLSundayTicket.com. Local and national games on YouTube TV. NFL Sunday Ticket for out-of-market games excludes digital-only games and commercial use. Terms and embargoes apply. Availability varies.
Vitamin Water Zero Sugar has great taste, zero BS, and obviously zero sugar. For those with zero room in their calendar. Zero patience for slow walkers. Those who get 0 hours of sleep on a Saturday night. Have zero filter, zero given, and zero interest in grabbing a plain, boring water. Grab a delicious Vitamin Water Zero Sugar today.
This episode is brought to you by LinkedIn. Healthcare professionals can lead their careers with LinkedIn. Discover jobs by specialty, preferred shifts, and even desired salary. From mental health therapists to radiology technicians, it's now faster and easier for healthcare professionals to find the right fit. Learn more at linkedin.com/healthcare. Side effects may include faster job placement, improved work-life balance, and increased career satisfaction.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How Are the Podcast, and I hope everyone is beginning this podcast with that match day feeling as the lads take on Crystal Palace this afternoon. It's two traditional sides, autumn sunshine and a 3 o'clock kickoff on a Saturday afternoon in the top flight. It doesn't get much better than this, ladies and gentlemen, so we thought we'd have a chat about it simply because we want to. And we have a full house today because everyone can't get enough of talking about the lads. So first up, we have someone who I know firsthand that we haven't heard from enough this week. It's Gavin Henderson. Hello, Gav.
I know. I've went from one extreme to the other. I think when you were away the other week, I was on every podcast for about a fortnight, and then I've been busy, and now I'm becoming the periphery figure. I don't know what's going on there.
Well, and you've had a bit of a sore throat, haven't you? So if you croak up today, people will know why.
That's it. Yeah, I think I sound okay, but we'll see after 10, 15 minutes. You never know.
Well, that's it. When you get all passionate, Gav, and you start, shouting about how great the lads are, sure your voice will start cracking.
You know what you'll get, though? You'll get a really good 10, 15 minutes out of us. I'm a bit like Dan Ballard. You get a good 10, 15 minutes out of us, and then I'll break down.
Right. Well, we'll hold that one because we'll park that one because we might come back to that. But moving on, apologies if you've had withdrawal symptoms from not hearing our next voice for longer than the last 5 minutes. But we also have Johnny Hawley with us. Hello, Johnny.
Morning, Chris. Morning, Gav. Yeah, it's been a rare few days off for me as well. I've been able to give the old vocal cords a little rest, so should be back fit and firing now, in theory.
Yeah, you did a good dog impression there. It was good. I enjoyed that.
I'm a man of many talents. I've got to put myself in the shop window. You know what I mean?
That's it. A big range of talents, from animals to talking about Sunderland. At least you've got that. But anyway, moving on because we've got lots to pack in, and because of course, if that isn't enough, it was great to speak to him the other week for the first time in a while, from my point of view. But we have Ant Waterson with us as well. Hello, Ant.
Hello. I'm a little bit like Dan Ballard as well. I'm on here once every 3 months. So. But I'm good. Thank you very much for having us back.
Dan Ballard's that you know that meme of 50 Cent where he said, "Why do you say fuck me for?"
That's him.
Ballard listening to this, catching straight for no reason.
I'll just make a note. We'll get the explicit section.
Just in case he does listen to us, can we say we absolutely adore you, Dan?
Sorry,
we're not really taking the mick out yet.
Yeah, we will, because like I said, we're going to part that conversation because we will get back into that. But like I said, we've got a lot to get through because we all watched the press conference on Thursday, and I thought there was a lot to take from that. And Gav, we'll kind of get straight in with how it started, basically, because it was all, I don't know about you, but I think it's nice that even though we were talking to Simon O'Rourke this week and he was saying how packed the press pack is, and like basically there was like one man and a dog in the League One, and now there's like standing room only, that it's still Nick Barnes's voice, and he piped up at the start, which is great. And he chimed in straight away with the transfer window and asking basically what Le Bris thought about it, which I thought was quite interesting because we haven't heard about him. And he just basically let out a little chuckle to start with and said yes. But then he started talking about the depth and the competition. But he did seem happy with it, didn't he?
Oh, well, and why wouldn't he be? I think he's been given the best hand any manager's ever had from a promoted side. No manager, to my mind, has ever been backed as well. So, I mean, I'm sure he's over the moon. Just funny, you remind us of something Nick said when he was on the pod the other week, where sometimes it's the facial expressions of Régis Le Bris that say more than the words.
Yeah.
And he'll just raise his eyebrows and it'll be a little smirk. And it almost says a lot more than what a sort of a monologue would. But he's clearly very happy, and why wouldn't he be? Like I said, I think all managers, when they sit back, would probably want more because they all want a bit more. Like I'm sure Régis Le Bris would love to have gone and signed Mbappe, Dembele, Messi, Van Dijk. He would like to have gone out and signed every superstar in the world. So, but realistically, we had a better window than anyone could have expected because, and I've heard you say this repeatedly this week, when chatting to people on the pod, that none of us saw this coming. And I'm sure he did. I'm sure when they sat down at the end of last season, they were very clear in what they were going to do. But as is the case with a well-run football club, they don't necessarily reveal all of the details to the public because they don't want us to know. And nor should we know. We have to just sit back and wait and see what happens. And if you trust the people who make these decisions, then it makes that process very straightforward. So for me, this summer was a breeze because I just sat back and went, I trust them. They're going to go out and get exactly what we need. And they did. So, I think there will have been points where he would have wanted a bit more, maybe wanted that little bit of experience a little bit earlier, just to help set the standard on the training pitch a little bit earlier. But look, when you see the business some of the other teams have done and then you look at ours, he's got to be over the moon with that. I think if you're a good football coach, there can't be anything better than being given the tools to do your job. And undoubtedly that's been the case with Reggie. So yeah, over the moon, I'm sure. And I'm sure it's making his job very easy at the minute because he goes into training. He's like, which international left back shall I pick from? Which international centre half shall I pick from? Which 20 million striker should I put on the bench today? It's like, it must be such a thrill for him.
Yeah. I mean, Johnny, Gav was absolutely right there talking about, especially when it comes to Le Bris, his body language tells you everything. And as soon as Nick Barnes asked the question, you could kind of see it in just his body language that he was happy. There was a couple of hints during the summer. I remember at about halfway through when we'd signed some young midfielders, he was talking about getting his experience. But Nick Barnes asked him about the other aspect to it, which has been the versatility. And it was I thought this was really interesting that when he started getting into it, because Nick Barnes asked the question saying, it seems like that's the way that the club's gone in terms of getting in players who can play in multiple different positions. But his response was interesting, where he said, it's not about positions. And he was talking about good players can be adaptive and be applied to different tasks, which I thought was really interesting.
Yeah, it's almost more about roles than it is about positions, isn't it? It's what job can you do for me, no matter where you are on the pitch. What are your skills and where can I put you? And I think it's an aspect which I think is often it's a bit overlooked really by the general sort of football and public. People, we all spend so much time thinking about, who's going to play on the right wing and who's going to play left back, and Dan Ballard's injured, so who's going to come in and replace him? And obviously those are important considerations for any team and any manager. But yeah, when you look at the players that we've brought in, we've brought in, say, Habib Diarra and Noah Siddiqui, I think for me are a perfect example of this. They both play basically the same position, don't they? They're both central midfielders. And if you drill down a little bit, they're both kind of box to box, really. They've got great stamina, they can get up and down. So they seem pretty similar. But then when you actually look at the way that Le Bris uses the two of them on the pitch, it's very obvious that they have quite different and specialised roles in the team. Diarra is clearly more about breaking forward and getting between the lines and driving forward from deep. I mean, you could see that even as early as the first half against West Ham when he breaks through with that lovely little 1-2 with was it Mayenda, I think, and then he has the one-on-one. That's his role in the team. Siddiqui is much more about, covering ground sort of side to side and mopping things up, and then less about, getting in between the midfield and the defence for the opposition, but much more about playing in the pockets of space centrally and deeper for us. And that, for me, that's just one example that, you could pick a slew of those across the team where even players who look very, very similar, and even when you do a little bit of surface level analysis, you think, oh, well, these two are doing the same job. Le Bris has actually got pretty specialised profiles of players that he can use in different situations. So, and obviously that's not to say these players can't adapt. Like you say, top level footballers are going to be able to, adapt to tactical changes and tweaks between games and within games. That should go without saying. But yeah, I think, you look at Ronaldo and Masuaku at left back. Those are two different players for the same position. And, you can go through the whole team. But that's something that for me, I think gives Le Bris a level of flexibility that we didn't maybe have last season. Last season we had a lot of times we just had people filling in. We had Chris Rigg filling in on the right wing, or Alan Brown filling in at right back. And these players did good jobs there and obviously helped us to a good season and promotion. So there's no sort of negativity in that assessment. But it just, for me, it allows us to be more proactive with the way that we set things up and go about things now, because we now have a much more varied and specialised kind of array of weapons, if you like, that we can then pick and choose from as we need them to look at specific opposition threats. So, with half an eye on obviously the Palace game today, Le Bris will be able to look at the way that they're going to set up specifically in their threats and weaknesses and be able to arrange a team with, very specific tactical plans in mind, rather than if you've not got those options, you may be a little bit more sticking plasters over gaping wounds sometimes, if you know what I mean. But yeah, no, I think, and like Gav said, you could tell that he's happy. And why wouldn't he be? Because we're all chuffed. We couldn't have gone into this season with a better squad, really, from the position that we started with. So I'm surprised he doesn't skip in whistling and singing to every press conference, to be honest.
Well, he's Sunderland manager, and he's getting results. So how can he not be happy with us behind him? But there was a question after this, Ant, and I think that whoever the journalist was, and I couldn't recognise the voice, to be honest. But it sounded like he tried to kind of catch Le Bris out a bit, because even though he said, yes, kind of, I'm happy with the transfer window, and that we've brought in good players and all this sort of stuff, someone said, rank it out of 10. And I think he saw it coming, because he had a bit of a wry smile on his face, and he basically dodged it. He answered the question without answering the question. But it was interesting that actually he said, I don't know, in terms of putting a number on it and putting that thing on it, because he just said it was important to reinforce the squad. But I mean, the first thing is, you can see Le Bris is very clever in these press conferences, and what Gav talking about, Nick Barnes talking about his body language. He's very kind of guarded and everything like this, but he did, like I said, there was these couple of snippets that he gave away that, that we've reinforced the squad, and he emphasised the point in competition that I mentioned, and just talking about what Johnny said there, the flexibility of the squad gives them lots of options, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. And to be fair, I think he did very well in dodging that question, to be honest, because, you can't really go, oh yeah, 10 out of 10, and then in sort of 6 weeks' time we haven't won a game. So no, I think he did very well. I thought it was a bit of a, as you said, I thought it was a bit of a silly question, to be honest. I don't think any manager worth of salt's going to be like answering questions like that. I think it's just a bit silly. But you know what? I think what it is, and what I kind of got in that press conference yesterday, was a quiet optimism about where we are and where we're going. In the next few weeks. He's going to have to use majority of his squad, and the fact that we've got these multi-million-pound players who probably won't be starting on tomorrow. Sorry, today. I think's amazing. I really do. And if you'd asked us as fans like 6 weeks ago that we're going to be looking at, these players who are phenomenal footballers signing for 20 million quid, who probably won't be starting, is amazing. From where we were to where we are, I think it's class. And like I say, I think every press conference he does now, he's slowly building more confidence in himself, and it's mint to say, Chris, to be honest.
Yeah, first one to open the curtain and let the cat out of the bag. Thanks, Ant. Well
I
played,
was literally going to say, well, you edit that out.
Oh no, we'll keep these in. It's another blooper there for the blooper reel that will keep going. But
it wouldn't be a preview pod, Chris, if we didn't have somebody do that multiple times, would it? So
yeah, exactly. It's a preview tradition there, isn't it? We've got to keep
Exactly.
that rolling. But the other thing, Gav, that he was asked on, which I've kind of mentioned this week, and I can't remember who we were talking to about it too now, but we were talking about these late goals, and I think it's been mentioned that 5 out of the last 6 were scored late goals in. And in his response, he was talking about, at the beginning, he shrugged his shoulders and he was like, well, I wish I could, find out what that is. I'd bottle it and, I'd give it to them every day. But he then started to talk about the positive mindset and something you love talking about as well, the connection with the fans. And it's funny because we talked about the atmosphere at the West Ham game, the atmosphere at the Brentford game, how the build-up kind of built everything up. But I think because the players are buying into that, and the fans are then responding to the players, and it's this two-way thing, that it produces this positive mindset. That means they go until the final whistle and these goals come about.
yeah, and I can't like you just said, I can't remember who it was you were talking to on the pod this week. Might have been Jonathan Wilson. One of the litany of guests we've had.
I was going to say, go back because we've had some brilliant pods this week. Go back and listen to them all if you haven't listened.
Yeah, there's a million people it could have been. But it was on one of the pods this week where you were talking about how for many years there's almost been this feeling that the fans were a hindrance and that we were toxic and that, players were signing for us and they were asking around and being told by players who've played here before, if they're not with you, it's not good. And it's almost as though that's been completely flipped. And if when actually this is our USP, this is our thing that we hold over most other football clubs, is that the Sunderland fans, when they're invested, they are a 12th man. And it's clearly made its mark. I mean, away from home, I don't think you can ever fault the Sunderland fans. I think we sell out pretty much everywhere we go. I like to think that, and this, please don't take this the wrong way, because I'm not a massive away fan, so I'm actually not in this category because I don't go to many away games. But I think the away fans are probably your hardcore, your most passionate fans, the ones who go over and above because they travel, up and down the country at God knows what cost to watch us play. And in some of the places we played in League One, I just think, how the hell did people get themselves up for that? So with them behind the players, they are genuinely a difference maker. But it can be tough when you're the away team, even if you've got 3,000-4,000 fans. It can be really tough because the home fans at the end of the day do tend to dwarf you, unless it's like a situation like when we played Blackpool on New Year's Day and there was like 9,000 of us and 1,000 of them. That doesn't really happen. But when we go to the Stadium of Light and it's sold out and it feels like an occasion, it makes a massive difference, an absolutely massive difference. And we've seen that in the results recently. And I think that the players almost, because they're bought into it now, because they've lived it, they've seen it, they can see the difference, what can be made when the players and the fans are connected. You see things like Adingra throwing his arms up after winning a corner after 5 minutes, and Mukiele winning a throw-in and he's giving it the big one. They've obviously, they're conscious of this thing, that, if you keep the fans involved through the game, they'll keep backing you. And we've said it for years, our fans, they celebrate tackles as much as they do goals, and it's true. And going into this game at the weekend, we know Palace fans are loud. They've got that alt-res section who they do chant the full game. I mean, it's an old school ground, Selhurst Park, so it's still got that sort of feeling, hasn't it, of a proper football ground. And it's nice that they've got a section of the fans that do get behind the team and stuff. So it should all add to the atmosphere. But going to Selhurst Park, we've sold out the away end. We're on a bit of a high because of the transfer window, because of the recent results. And I'm sure it will make a difference if we do get something there. But yeah, I just wanted to highlight that because, again, I can't remember who it was that you spoke to who said it. But it's true, it is true. And it does feel a bit corny and cheesy to say we are a 12th man, but we genuinely have been. And that's been shown in the last 5 or 6 games.
Yeah, might have actually been Martin from memory, but
so I'm giving all the credit to to a guest, and it wasn't even one of
Well,
us.
I'm still trying to rack my brains. I did think you were about to say Mukiele was mucking in there, but I thought that's where
Headline for another day, isn't it?
I thought that's where your sentence structure was taking you, but you were.
Hey, it's Paris. You know I love sparkly things, right? Like stars. Duh. And thanks to Hilton and AutoCamp, I just slept under them. Picture me serving looks by the fire outside my luxurious Airstream, making s'mores with the kids, while a national park is our backdrop. The great outdoors meets Hilton hospitality. That's hot. Explore all the new ways to stay at Hilton.com. Hilton for the stay.
This episode is presented by State Farm. Having insurance isn't the same as having State Farm. It's like expecting the leadership of a team captain on the football field, but getting a sea captain. You wouldn't settle for just anything for your team. Shouldn't it be the same for your insurance? So don't settle for just any insurance when you can go with a leader. State Farm. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there.
Heather is a nurse practitioner from United Healthcare.
We meet patients wherever they live.
During a house call, she found Jack had an issue.
Jack's blood pressure was dangerously high.
It was 217 over 110.
So they got Jack to the hospital and got him the help he needed.
He had had a stent placed in his heart, preventing a massive heart attack.
If it wasn't for my guardian angel, I wouldn't be here.
Hear more stories like Jack's at unitedhealthcare.com. Benefits, features, and/or devices vary by plan, area, limitation, and exclusions apply.
But anyway, Johnny, just on a similar theme, I think it was kind of a follow-up to this, and I think it was actually Andy Sixsmith, who we talked to this week again. He raised the question of Xhaka, and actually he actually brought up Xhaka singing "Wise Men Say," and he was talking about that the impact he's had, and it looks like he's behind that team spirit, and he asked about the impact he's had on the group, and it was again. I don't think Le Bris could have talked any higher of him, because basically he said he's the symbol. He's the symbol of everything kind of that's going on and how people need to act, and said he sets the standard and shows everyone how to be successful. I mean, that coming from a manager this early on to speak so highly of him just shows what a fella he is behind the scenes.
Yeah, so firstly, Chris, if you ever fancy a job change, on Match of the Day, they have them little captions at the corner of the screen with Mukiele mucking in. You fit right in there. So if you ever need to give up the day job, I think I can get you a pivot. But no, on the topic of Xhaka, I think it's kind of played out, hasn't it? The way that you would have envisioned a sort of perfect world making a signing like that. We all, obviously, when the link first came in, everyone was a bit like, all right, yeah, Xhaka coming to Sunderland, I'll believe it when I see it. Then when it happens, I think it's so out of the blue in a footballing sense. I know it dragged on for a couple of weeks, but it's so much of a departure from the norm for a club like Sunderland that you can see it going one or two ways. Either he smashes it and it all goes swimmingly, or there is that little, 1 to 5% of you that just, what if his legs have just gone? What if this is when he falls off? What if he doesn't settle? All those, little sort of horrible voices in your head that just sort of peck away at you. Whereas if you were looking on the other side, the positive side, you think, right, imagine he gets the armband, basically day one. Le Bris gives him the armband. I hope he's starting every game and playing well. Second home game of the season, he gives a 97th minute first time assist for a winning goal against a potential relegation rival. He's singing Wise Men Say after the game. He's kind of ticking all of those little boxes of things that you'd like to see from a signing like this. The buying into the culture, even that interview or whatever it was, where he spoke about kind of his reasons for signing for Sunderland, and that sort of the most quotable line being the "I wanted to suffer" sort of thing, which, you've come to the right place, mate. But, that like, even in that, he comes across as a very passionate, committed, hard-working sort of guy who, clearly just has that emotional investment in football, and it's starting to look like in Sunderland that endears you to the Sunderland fans quicker than anything else. So it is all kind of going basically as you would want. And I think going back to that day where Le Bris gives him the captaincy, I think that was the immediate signal that this isn't just he's a good player, let's bring him in type sign. And this, like you say, it's symbolic. And I think that's intentional from the club as well as from the player himself. You know, the way that, I mean, obviously they were going to make a big deal of it publicity-wise, but just, you know, all of the noises around the signing, making him captain, the way that he's played and been wheeled out and the clips and everything, it all does feel very intentional to create this almost sense of aura around Xhaka, to make him that sort of talisman, which I think, you know, some of the best smaller, in inverted commas, teams in the Premier League do this, where they have obviously every team can have a siege mentality or whatever to try and get through the tough times, but I think the best and the closest knit teams have those one or two talisman in the team who, you know, just by looking to them on the pitch, the fans feel more confident. The players around them feel more confident. They can drag you through a game. And I think the early signs are that Granit Xhaka is going to be that man for Sunderland this season, or certainly one of those men. You know, I think at times almost Mayenda kind of became that figure towards the end of last season. And there was all this, you know, wearing the sunglasses after the games and the celebration and all the rest of it. It builds up a little bit of mystique around a player, which I think can help when you feel like you're a bit out of inspiration, out of ideas. To have something like that to turn to, I think, is a very, very powerful thing that, if harnessed in the right way, can be a big, big help to a team like us this season. So, yeah, and I think that the way that Le Bris speaks about him, as I say, I think that all kind of ties into the overall package of what we're trying to not turn Xhaka into, because he's obviously already an elite player before he comes here. But, you know, I think we're trying to very much build on that aspect of his identity and play up to it, which, yeah, not that I think Le Bris is sort of pantomiming anything in press conferences, because you know, you're lucky if you get more than 3 words about him on some days. But yeah, I think it is, for me, it's significant the levels to which the praise has kind of been lavished on him early doors, because he is going to be a key man this season, either positively or negatively. You know, let's say he picks up an injury or something, hope not, fingers crossed, touch wood and all the rest of it. But, you know, he is going to be decisive either way. So I would be surprised if his name isn't mentioned in the majority of press conferences, just because he's going to be that central to everything going on.
Yeah. And I know you have all the contacts in the business, Johnny, so make sure I hit you up for that caption job before we...
But slide us that tenner after this.
Yeah, well, absolutely. You know, everyone's. I'll be hitting you up. But look, last point on team spirit, because another one that I thought was interesting, and again, a little peek behind the curtain, I thought, because he was asked about team spirit, and it was, and actually, he gave a bit of a lengthy answer to this one, which I thought was interesting. That we were talking about the players he's brought in and how quickly people have settled, and he talked about actually that he was involved in the analysis of the players in the first place, and he was the first voice or one of the first voices they heard from Sunderland, that he was involved from the very start on all of them. Then he made sure he was there to welcome them. And then there was this other little bit that he kind of just slipped in there in terms of talking about the systems we played. And he said that when they first came in, we tried to simplify our game model to them. But I thought all those points were really interesting, that how involved he was, and he's got a plan to help them come in, that they don't chuck everything at them.
Yeah, I must admit the nicest thing I thought about that was when he said he was there and he was greeting them this, that, and the other, because when you get this, like, and I dare say it, the model, when you get this model, he's probably not signing.
Sorry, and just did bunny ears there, so I just wanted to...
the model.
I had to get this for the audio.
For the audio, yeah. But, like, and I'm over the moon that he's one of the first ones to greet them and everything like that, and get them to know, you know, the state, their stadium and the academy and everything like that, and kind of basically breathe into what his, you know, philosophy is going to be as well. And the fact that, you know, the amount of these players that we've had to sign and we have signed, you want that as a player when you're going through the doors of the academy, your manager's there greeting you, having a bit crap on and all that. That's what you want. And you don't get that at every football club, mind. You know what I mean? That does not happen. So that's great to see. And I quite like, again, what you said about this team spirit and stuff like that. You're seeing that in all sorts of, you know, the club have done very well the last few weeks with the videos and stuff, or the Wilson Isidore going to the restaurant and, you know, making the Wilson burger, wasn't it? That was brilliant, honest. It was absolutely brilliant. You know, seeing stuff like that, and you can just tell that this team, even though these players are quite new, that they're just together, and I really, really enjoy that. And you know what, with Le Bris, like I say, like every week you're hearing him say stuff like that, you're just getting this aura of him that this man's just such a clever bloke and he knows what he's doing, and I'm just chuffed with him. I was chuffed with that yesterday, Chris. I've got to be honest. Like him saying that was brilliant. It just like, 'cause I think that should happen. I think it did happen. You know, like we're like the elder statesman of this podcast. You know what I mean? That would have happened with Reedy. You know what I mean? Reedy would have been the first one to get in and give them, probably offer them a pint. But, you know, that would have happened, and you know, it's just great to see, mate. It just takes us back, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's it. And just, I mean, linked to the similar theme, Gav. We've talked about it a little bit this week with a lot of people, but it was interesting to hear the manager being quizzed on how he's managing the situations that have been kind of caused, I suppose, by all these new players coming in terms of Dan Neil, Chris Rigg, you know, Dan Ballard, which we might come on to in kind of injuries and team selections and things like that. But, you know, how to manage those players who were so important last season who can't get a look in this season. And he tried to explain it by saying there was the first thing they had to do was have a conversation with them, make them aware of what was happening. But then he gave the two examples of Enzo Lefebvre and Wilson Isidore, who didn't start in the side at the start of the season, but are getting their opportunities and are proving themselves when they do get those opportunities. But and then he kind of finished off by saying these players have to, after those conversations, have to trust the process, and the club has to make sure everyone's involved in the project, Gav.
Yeah, well, it all comes back to this thing about buying into what the club are trying to do, doesn't it? And I think it's been made very clear that we see this as a squad game. So whether you start the match or not, you're part of the squad, you're important. And that's not just on a Saturday, that's every day on the training pitch. And that might sound like a very obvious thing to say, but we know what footballers are like, especially you know, goal scoring footballers. They're selfish by nature, which is why they're so good at what they do. Because when they get near goal, they know where to put the ball. So it must be tough to know that you're not considered part of that starting 11. But I guess the education of how we do things is that, well, yeah, you might not start the game, but we have a group of you who we might need to finish the game off, to win us the game, to see a game out. Your role is just as important as Joe Bloggs at left back, who starts and maybe gets 70 minutes and comes off. Because for the last 20 minutes, we need your energy. We need your legs. We need your perseverance. We need your creativity. We need your hard work. And I think that must be so tough to get players to buy into. But if you can do it, what a weapon that is to have players who are happy coming in and just doing a job for 20 minutes here and there. And that might not last the whole season. I'm sure, you know, I actually will get onto this, but I think some of these players might start the game today. But, you know, it's not going to be the case all season. You know, there will be games where we only need Wilson Isidore for 20 minutes and Enzo Lefebvre for 20 minutes. But they're still important players. We've signed them for a reason. We want them to be here. So it's that thing, isn't it? It's just how do you get that balance right? And he clearly has. I mean, I think it must be so difficult for any player to go into a meeting with Régis Le Bris and be angry with him, because he's not a bullshitter. He doesn't lie. He's not egotistical. I think he's very straightforward, and I think he's very ruthless. But he does it in a sort of unconventional way, doesn't he? Like, I think of Peter Reid as quite a ruthless manager. Peter Reid, if you piss Peter Reid off, you're out the door. Happened to Summerby, happened to Macon, happened to Alan Johnson, happened to Lee Clark. You know, they all got the boot when they pissed him off, and they're still people who we view as really important former players. But Reedy also wore his heart on his sleeve, and he could say the wrong things from time to time, and he had aggression in his voice, and he was a very old school, aggressive kind of say it how it is manager. Whereas Régis Le Bris isn't that type of character yet. I would almost say he's as ruthless as any sort of manager I've seen. I mean, the decisions he'd had to make this summer alongside Christian Speakman and the owner and Florent Gasoffi, and to be honest, when you're making them decisions by committee, it's probably a little bit easier to be ruthless because it's not just on you, it's on a group of people. But still, can you imagine being Dan Neil and going in that room with Régis Le Bris and sort of throwing things around the room and offering them out? Like, you hear these stories all the time about players going into meetings with manager. It just won't happen. So, I think I'd be surprised to learn that there's players who aren't or weren't made clear in what the role is. I know Alan Brown came out and said something, and I actually had no problem with that, by the way. I thought what he said was absolutely fine. Nice to hear a bit of honesty. He was probably sold the dream by the club that you'll get promoted with us. You can achieve your dream of playing in the Premier League. But things change, right? I mean, I'm sure they had a sit-down conversation with Alan Brown and said, look, you can stay around, but we've brought in 4 midfield players and you were already down the pecking order. We can get you a really good move to a team in the Championship who's going to be competing for promotion. And maybe if you have a really good year next summer, if you come back to Sunderland and you've had a great year, you might be part of our plans. So
it's exactly what they said to Roberts, isn't it? It was said when he moved to Birmingham that the reason he'd gone was the club had specifically said, we don't mind keeping you. You'll get some minutes. It just won't be many.
Yeah, and that's it. And the players aren't daft. They must see the scale of the change around them and be like, bloody hell. But at the same time, I think if you're on the journey with the club and you have been, which all of these players have, you can't deny what we're doing is the right thing. And there's no ego involved here. So as much as Patrick Robertson, Alan Brown and Dan Neil and whoever else want to be Premier League footballers, it's not about them, it's about Sunderland. Yeah. And ultimately, for the long-term good of the football club, we've got to make decisions that ensure this football club doesn't get relegated. And unfortunately, there's going to be collateral in that process, and players are going to get upset and going to leave. And as long as I hate when you hear, like I haven't actually listened to the podcast yet, but I saw Charlie Austin was on Under the Cosh this week, and there was a clip going around on social media about him talking about Hasenhüttl at Southampton. Now, basically, they just went into training one day. He saw his name on the list for the bomb squad that were getting left behind and weren't going on pre-season. And Hasenhüttl, whatever the frig his name is, kept his cell out the way of the players and disappeared. So those that had a problem with him couldn't have a conversation. And he said he's a rat. That's the worst thing a manager can do. And I don't think there'll ever be a situation where you can accuse Régis Le Bris of being that kind of manager. I think if any of those players want to have a conversation, the door's open, you'll pour them a cup of coffee, they'll sit down and they'll talk like rational humans. There'll be no anger involved. And I think that's for the betterment of this football club and the squad, because you look at the people we've got in the football club who aren't going to be involved in every single 11, the likes of Luke O'Nien and Daniel, they're good people. And that's what you want around the squad on a day-to-day basis. Because like I said at the top of this point, it's about more than just what happens on a Saturday and in that starting 11. It's every day on the training ground. And all these players have got a role to play in what I just said, the bigger picture of keeping Sunderland in the Premier League, whether that's playing 38 Premier League games from the start or 10, 5, 20 sub-appearances, whatever it is. It's about what they all do collectively and not just what one person does.
Yeah, and saying that name in a South Tyneside accent just makes it.
I think I said it right the first time, didn't I?
It just improves it, doesn't it, on whatever it was in the first place. But
I'm going to be on like a
I think you were right. It just sounded better.
I think you got it right first, and then the second time you just you doubt yourself.
I want to get it. I want to get into talking about Palace because again, this did come up in the press conference. We have been looking at Palace and a big conversation with Kevin Day about it. And 13 seasons in the Premier League, and they've finished between 15th, I think, and 11th or 10th. I think 10th is their highest and 15th is their lowest in 13 seasons. And he was asked about Crystal Palace, and he said it's a good example for us. And I mean, you've got to look at how I think they've gone through 8 managers in that time in 13 years and finished in mid-table in the Premier League. And it's almost like, bizarrely, it's almost like that's the first step we want to get to. We want to be that Crystal. We want to be that established side who don't worry about going down, and that's our first step.
I bet you they're not thinking about 13 years and not getting any higher than 10th, though. I bet you that's not where the club are focusing at this moment in time. Look, bit tongue-in-cheek, because obviously, we all want Sunderland to be playing in Europe in the next 3 seasons and winning Champions Leagues and all the rest of it. Maybe not quite as realistic, but yeah, certainly the first. Hey, if you want to put your name to that quote, you can. Yeah, but do not rope me into it.
Hold me to it. Do
it. Half full Henderson will definitely have us winning the Champions League in 3 years. No, but jokes aside, Palace are definitely sort of your archetypal first step along that road, aren't they? You know, that is where you're looking as a newly promoted side. You're looking at Crystal Palace and going, never really in danger, you know, never properly in the relegation fight late on. Maybe, you know, the first couple of seasons they came up, but beyond then, you're never getting to March, April time and thinking, oh, bloody hell, Palace looking serious bother here. They're always pretty much safe or a win or two away from being out of it. So from that point of view, they're absolutely the model. But then, you know, I think there's a lot of people who would kind of look down the noses at finishing in the consistently 15th to 10th in the Premier League. And nobody as a kid is dreaming of mid-table, obviously, but that's a bloody difficult thing to do, especially with the way that the game's gone in the last 10 years. And we all have experienced the brutal nature of the yawning chasm between Premier League and Championship as the money just grows and grows and grows. So for a club like Palace, who, yes, for 13 seasons they've been on the right side of it, but it isn't ever that far away that they could drop. And yet, despite the backdrop of that level of pressure and expectation and risk if things go wrong, I think they've managed to be generally very level-headed in the way they've done business. And, you know, they managed to hold on to some very good players for a lot of seasons when other clubs would have been pressured into selling.
Unbelievable recruitment from EFL, by the way. I love their recruitment. When you see some of the players they've signed, Eza, Elise, Wharton, I mean, these are top footballers, and they're taking gambles on players that none of these other clubs are taking gambles on because they kind of look down their nose on the EFL. It's something to be admired, like.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's a great point as well. You know, all of the attention goes on, you know, Bournemouth, Brighton, Brentford, who are recruiting more exotic names from across the continent for pennies and then selling them for, you know, 10, 20 times the price. But like you say, Palace's model of recruiting the best up-and-coming young, primarily English or British talent from the Football League and particularly the Championship, you know, there's a lot of value in that market. So, you know, I think in general, a lot of the footballing world until May this year would have looked at Palace and gone, it's just Palace though, isn't it? You know, they're just they're just one of them London clubs making up the numbers in the Prem. You know, they're a dime a dozen. But actually, I've always quite liked Palace. Really, you know, ever since they've come up, I've thought they've been without being spectacular, they've been a pretty well run, well supported, and you know, club who play decent football on the pitch as well. And then they won the cup in May, and then they've won the Community Shield, and they're in Europe, so they're now starting to experience the sort of the trappings of the next level up in the English football pyramid, if you like. And so, yeah, I think there are a lot of things that we could look at Palace and want to emulate. And I think, you know, there are a lot of lessons we could take. But then the flip side of that for the short term, which is the game today, is they're a team who've been in the Premier League for 13 unbroken seasons. So they have banked a lot of money in that time. They've built a very good squad full of very competitive players who, you know, and it's not like they got to one of these FA Cup finals where, you know, a League One team's fluke into the final as well and you just beat them. You know, they've beat Man City in the Cup final. They've beat Liverpool in the Community Shield final. They regularly bloody the noses of the best teams in the country. That it's going to be one hell of a proposition for us to turn up to Selhurst Park and take the 3 points away because, you know, having such a well-run outfit over a prolonged period of time results in a very, very well-organised football team. And it's going to be some job for Régis Le Bris to put together an 11 and a tactical plan to go there and get a result because they, for me, have one of the most balanced physical profiles of a squad in the league. You know, their mixture of physical dominance, pace, power, but also the perfect sprinkling of technical ability and quality and skill. I think they're a really, really, really dangerous team. And so, you know, I wouldn't say I'm scared, but I'm certainly apprehensive.
I was deep in it, gaming on Samsung Galaxy Z Fold 7. Unfolding the screen made it twice as big and so immersive, I kinda lost myself. Might have trolled a little too close to the sun. Someone in the chat told me to touch grass, so I took my Z Fold 7 outside and kept playing. Still won, got a tan, and a nice little reset. Powerful processor, realistic graphics, you stay locked in, streak stays alive. Can your phone do that?
The new Galaxy Z Fold 7. Get yours at Samsung.com.
Mint is still $15 a month for premium wireless. And if you haven't made the switch yet, here are 15 reasons why you should. 1, It's $15 a month. 2, seriously, it's $15 a month. 3, no big contracts. 4, I use it. 5, my mom uses it. Are you playing me off? That's what's happening, right? Okay, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, $15 per month equivalent required. New customer offer first 3 months only. Then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See mintmobile.com.
For a limited time at McDonald's, get a Big Mac extra value meal for $8. That means 2 all-beef patties, special sauce, lettuce, cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun, and medium fries, and a drink. We may need to change that jingle.
Prices and participation may vary.
Yeah, it's definitely. I mean, Kevin Deere was pretty adamant and quite rightly said that this is our biggest test of the season, and they've got a really good 3-4-3 formation, which seems to work. They've got a few injuries. Wharton's out. Sarr picked up a hamstring injury against Villa, I think, last time out for them. But and looking at our lineup and what we might do, if you look at the back four, and it was again, this came up in the press conference. I think Nick Barnes asked him, saying, what is your best back four, which I don't think he was ever going to answer. But he did say that it's all about momentum and we do have really good options. But he did say because of that momentum, and he did hint that basically it's all about form. And I think because we've got options, that it's kind of looking at the last game, how did they play? Were they solid? Well, they stay in. And it seems as simple as that.
It does, but then you've got to remember, obviously, the international break that we've had. And obviously, you know, we had Alderete, who I think only got back from where he was last night. So, like, you know, is that going to be one of them things where if he's only had a little bit of rest, you know, is it something where we can bring, because we are capable of bringing the centre defender in. But for me, if everyone's fit, if everyone's ready, if everyone's, you know, ready to go, I don't think you can change that back four or back five with the goalkeeper with Robin Reeves. So I think it pretty much picks itself rather than being an injury. I think the only one way you're looking at, you know, would probably bring Gertrude in for Hume. Is it more of a Gertrude game? But I think this will set Hume right down to the ground, you know, good old fashioned, you know, ding dong with an excellent winger. You know, I think it'll be a really, really good game, that one. But just going back to what Johnny said about Palace, I fully agree with him. And I didn't know that until you said that was 13 years, because that's gone. I think that's probably gone under the radar of a lot of people, because there were like a yo-yo team right at the back in the day, you know, they were up and down and all that. And I think a lot of teams kind of just, and a lot of fans kind of just going, you know, it's Crystal Palace, but this is a team who's won the FA Cup, won the Community Shield. And for me, I've got one of the best managers in the league in Oliver Glasner. I think he's a phenomenal manager. And the fact he went there and turned them around when they were probably looking at relegation, was amazing. And the fact they keep on losing these players, you know, your Ezers, your Zahars back there, you know, and the lad who went to Bayern Munich was Alicia, wasn't it? You know, and they keep on, you know, replacing them with these players, you know, likes of Adam Wharton. I know he's injured as well, but he's a phenomenal footballer. Mateta up front. I mean, I'm amazed nobody went for him in the transfer window. You know, like, you know, a proven Premier League striker who scores goals. What's not to like, you know? And whoever does play at centre half for us is going to have a really hard day on, you know, when 3 o'clock comes around, because he is a phenomenal footballer. So yeah, it's going to be great, Chris. It's going to be a cracking game, I think.
Next week, yesterday, in 2 days' time, whenever the game is. But yeah, Gav, I mean, you hinted that you thought he might bring some players in, and made a good point about Alderete coming back late. But what changes can you see? Because I mentioned that 3-4-3 formation, and they do like to get down the flanks. And I think it's going to be a busy day for whatever options he picks out wide. And you would like to think Lefay's probably the better option, even if he didn't have a better game, just because of his work rate down there. Because I think it's going to be needed, isn't it?
Yeah, I would definitely start Enzo on the left again. I think we saw last season, didn't we? Was it the Burnley game and I want to say Leeds away, Borough away last season, where Enzo played on the left away from home, and he was fantastic, because he can come up with those moments of quality, but he does work really hard, and we've even seen that this season when he's came on the wing. And I know people keep saying it's not his position, but is there a manager in world football who knows Enzo Lefay's qualities better than Régis Le Bris and where the best to play him? I mean, who am I to argue with it? If he thinks he's better off playing on the left, then, you know, it is what it is. So, yeah, I'd be happy with him over there. In terms of changes, I think there's a couple of things here. So Eliza Mayenda's been away on international duty quite a bit. Brian Broby has only really just arrived. He hasn't been introduced slowly into the team. So as much as there's a part of us thinks, I'd love to see him up against Gay just to see what that battle's like, because we've heard how strong he is. Put him up against Mark Gay and see how he does. I would love to see that. And it might be something we see later in the game, probably. But I just think, given Wilson Isidore scored a couple of goals this season already, he's been there training all over the international break. I just think it would make more sense to start him in this one. So I'm going with Isidore up top. In terms of the midfield, I wouldn't change the three, despite the fact they've all been away on international duty. There's nobody pushing to get into the team, really, who I would replace any of them with, regardless of the fact they've been away for the last 10 days or whatever it's been. And then at the back, I think it's probably a bit soon to bring in Gertruda, but would you be surprised, really? Given his quality and his profile, would you be surprised if he played?
I think Ant made a really good point. Maybe Palace isn't the best place.
Well, I don't know. What I just think of they play with a really strong centre forward, right? Mateta, he's a unit, isn't he? So you're going to need physical lads at the back, which is why I'm guessing it's going to be Alderete and Mukiele, because they did so well together in the last game. But I'm just saying I wouldn't be surprised if we went with Gertrude. He's been on the training pitch. I don't know how much that comes into Régis Le Bris's thinking. I'd probably have to go back and look at previous international breaks and where he went with his team selection when it came to the lads who'd been away and stuff. Like, does he value that time on the training ground more with the players who are back home than he does the lads who've gone away in terms of prepping for games? Like, you've got to think about this week. If the players, there'll be players who never come back in till Friday, and then they'll have travelled down Friday and stopped over Friday night for the game. So it's like, how much preparation can you actually do? Really, it's tough.
There's a big question mark over Alderete in that case.
I would say if Gertrude's going to play, I think you'll probably play centre half. I can't see him. Yeah. I can't see Hume not playing. Gotta be honest.
I did see when Alderete was playing at 12:30 our time on Wednesday in the morning, and I was thinking, bloody hell, it's going to be 5, 6 in the morning their time by the time he gets to bed. Like, that can't be good. Then having to travel from South America back to us, and presumably he'll have just flown into Heathrow, and then he'll have met the squad in London. That, like, how much does that matter? I mean, at the same time, Spain's not that far away. Every time he's went away on international duty with Paraguay, I'm sure he's had the same problem coming back into Spain and having to play for his team there. It's not a huge difference, is it? So, I don't know. I'm kind of looking at it and thinking I don't want to change too much around from the last game, but it's almost difficult to see how he doesn't make a couple just because of how many have been away.
Well, go on then. Put your throw your hat in the ring and say, right, these are the changes I think you'll make.
Well, it'll be Roofs in goal. Ronaldo will play left back, and he's been away. But I think it'll be Ronaldo because both him and Masawatu have been away. We've heard Sirkin's out till God knows when now. Alderete, Mukiele, Hume, same midfield three. Lithia on the left. I don't know about the right because Tolby has been away on international duty but hasn't played much. I was looking, I think he's maybe had about 20 minutes off the bench. He hasn't had a lot of time at all. And Morocco again's not that far, is it? So it's not like he's had to go too far, but still.
4 hours, it's not far.
Well, yeah, Tolby on the right, so maybe just Isidore, actually, looking at it.
You think Isidore's going to come in?
Yeah. I mean, like I say, I just think it's probably a bit too soon for Broby and for Mayenda being away and all that time, and Isidore pushing for a start, and he's been on the training pitch. I would probably start him, but the part of us just really wants to see Broby start against Mark Gay.
But, I mean, Johnny, just listening to Gav there, he thinks the only change will be Isidore up front. It was, again, little thing for him, Le Bris, in the press conference. He mentioned, he's mentioned this a few times, but he again talked about the finishes of a game. Isidore's look great from the bench, so it might be tempting to do that again. But do you agree with Gav, and that might be the one change, or do you think you'll go the same again?
I can see the logic for starting Isidore. I do agree. I think it's the kind of game where Mayenda's best qualities probably aren't the most suited to this game anyway. Do you know what I mean? I think, Mayenda's at his best when he can get the ball down and he can get it at his feet and he can run at people. And I think this is going to be a game. I mean, I know we don't prioritise possession anyway, but I think this is going to be a game where it's a bit lonely playing up front. I think, that you talked about it earlier, Chris, as well, the idea of playing Lefebvre on the left specifically because of his work rate and getting back and defending. And I think there's a lot of sense in that because the way Palace are going to set up, we know the formation they're going to play, we know the style of play that they're more than likely going to employ. And so, I think whoever plays up front, you're going to be looking at sort of 30, 40-yard gaps between them and the nearest, Sunderland shirt for a lot of the sort of, even the times that we're on the ball in this game, never mind when we don't have the ball. So I think Isidore is somebody who, we all know how good he is on the break. We've seen it this season. We saw it last season. He's got the pace to constantly be in the back of a defender's mind. If I leave him alone, if he gets in behind, I'm not catching him. And that could look very, very silly. So I think that's the kind of thing which could, in a weird way, help us defensively as well. Just that little bit of doubt in their minds of pushing up too much and leaving too much space in behind. So, I think... And obviously Mayenda haven't been away, so I think Isidore, I do think that makes a lot of sense. And like you say as well, for Big Brian, it's probably just, a bridge too far at the moment to actually start a game. But that'll certainly, that's going to be a selection debate that's going to rumble on all through the season, isn't it? Because we've got 3 for 1 position, so it's going to be a fun debate we can have every Saturday morning. Wink, wink from now till the end of May, I think.
Big Brian Brobby, it might catch on, mate. You never know. But Ant, I mean, if you ask me now, I'll absolutely snap your hand off for a draw. But how do you think it's going to play out? Do you think it's going to be, backs to the wall? Do you think we're going to sit in? And is it going to be one of those nail biters where we try and hit them on the break and get that chance and get our noses in front?
Do you know what I think? As much as we've just gone on about how we adore Palace and this and that and the other, I think it's a good time to play them. You mentioned before with Wharton being out, Sarr being out. I mean, there's 2 big players for them in their midfield, especially Wharton. I mean, Wharton's a phenomenal footballer. So I think, if we can look at, they're going to be bringing in 2, new midfielders who probably haven't played very much all season. And we've got our midfield 3 who played pretty much every minute of every league game. So that's probably good for us. I think it's going to be won or lost there. I think that's where we need to get that early on, get Jack on the ball quickly and spread. I think it will be a case of where we don't see much of the ball early on and just try and get a fail into the game, try and get, the odd one on the break or whatever. But I think if we can score first and then see what we can do, I think we've got a good chance. I mean, again, looking at it, as you've just said there, if you'd offered us a draw now, I'd probably take it. I'd bite your hands off, to be honest. But I think there is a case where we can win this game. I don't think it's one of them ones where you're looking at where we're massive underdogs. I think it's a good game for us. So it'll be an interesting one.
Yeah, and you've got to shoot off, and so we're going to waffle a little bit more. But if you can just give us a quick prediction before you head off.
1-0 us, Easter.
Oof. I'm going to check the odds on that and see what the chances of that is happening, because I think it's pretty remote, if I'm perfectly honest.
Glass half full. Gav's got some competition this week, man.
Interestingly though, and I found this quite interesting. Kevin Day said that Palace don't score many goals, which actually I thought was quite interesting, because I have this different perception from the outside of Palace.
Do you know what it is as well regarding, because I don't have to shoot off, but everyone's saying, our home form is important, and they are right. But there are going to be them odd games where we do shock teams, where, and we probably have to do that, where we go to a game where we're not expected to do anything and come away with something. And I think this one, just with their injuries, just with, us having a break and getting some players back, I just think I think we could just edge it. And listen, I might be wrong and we might be 3-0 down after 20 minutes, but for me, I just think we're on a really, really good run. I think the morale's massively high at the minute. We're coming off the back of that brilliant win over Brentford. And Isidore is obviously, full of the joys of spring and everything like that. He'll have had a couple of weeks with his band. He'll come back firing. I just fancy it. I don't know why, but something's just ticking in me waters. to be honest.
That's a statement for you, head off. But cheers, thank you very much.
Thanks very much. See you later, lads.
And Gav, I asked this to Kevin Day actually, just about Premier League clubs in general when they're playing Sunderland, and I think this might be true with the Palace because they've actually, they've had 2 good draws, Chelsea and Forest, and then a good win against Aston Villa away from home. Their confidence is going to be high. So, do you think that there's a different type of pressure on Premier League clubs when they play Sunderland at home, where there's almost that expectation that they should get 3 points, and that could actually work against them if we frustrate them?
Definitely at the start of the season. Yeah, I think I said this the other week when we played, I think it was actually the Brentford game, because as much as we love Sunderland and we think we've had a great transfer window and we've, signed some brilliant players and all that, we aren't viewing Sunderland through the same lens that fans of other clubs are and managers of other clubs are. They'll be looking at it and going, this team finished 4th in the Championship last year. They're coming up just to stay up, really. They'll be happy with staying up. We should be looking at this as a game to get 3 points from. And I think until we, let's say we get to November or something and we're in the top 10 and everyone's like, fucking hell, actually, these are not going down. They're a good team. We've seen it in the past with I think it was Sheffield United under Wilder the first time round when everyone underestimated them completely, and then after about 10 games they were 5th in the league and people were like, shit, what's going on here? We have seen that kind of thing happen in recent years. So it does happen. It does happen when teams come up and people underestimate them and they find a way of playing which these teams just can't get around. And I'm hoping that's the case, to be honest. I don't want to dive in too early on that opinion. But with two wins out of 3, and I definitely think that West Ham and Brentford maybe took us a little bit too lightly at periods in the games, and then we caught them. And I'm hoping that's going to be the case at Palace. I mean, I mentioned it just before he dropped there, but Wharton's missing, which is a big plus for us because he's such a good player. He's influential in that midfield. He's sort of their metronome in midfield, isn't he? He keeps everything moving in there. And there's been the whole Gay thing, which I've wrote about on the website this week. I mean, I've heard loads about his professionalism and how he just gets on with a job and all that. But you cannot get away from the fact he had a medical with Liverpool. He was basically a Liverpool player. There was a piece of paper between him being a Liverpool player and not being a Liverpool player, and Palace pulled the plug on that. And whether it affects his performances, we're going to find out. But mentally, that's going to have an effect on him. It's got to.
Well, he was asked about it on England duty. I think it might have even been just after the game.
Multiple times.
Yeah, and the one that I saw was something like, it's been an interesting 8 days for you, hasn't it, Mark? How are you feeling? And he just said something like, yeah, I feel great. Just so obviously holding in some bitterness around that move. So, I mean, whether there's any impact on the actual football pitch remains to be seen, but he's not happy.
Yeah. Well, wasn't there something the other week as well when Glasner was like, they got beat the other week, I think?
No, it was Stamford Bridge. They got a draw at Stamford Bridge.
Was that it? And
he was walking off the pitch
yeah.
and he ignored him. And Glasner talked to another player. I can't remember who that was, but basically pointed to Gahey like, what's up with him, basically.
Yeah.
But yeah. And and I think he's carrying a groin strain at the minute as well, all through the kind of international duty I was reading as well. So, I mean, Johnny, Kevin Day was still pretty confident, but, can we say this is a good time to play them? Because, they have got problems and at full strength, obviously they're going to be a better side. But I've got a couple of mates who are season ticket holders at Ipswich, and they said they couldn't believe when they rocked up to the Premier League and they started playing the likes of Palace, and then they went, bloody hell, yeah, actually we realise how good the Premier League is right now. I mean, can you? I mean, by far it is the biggest challenge we've had. But again, how much do you think we'll be able to play? Do you think it's a case of us sitting in and frustrating them for a bit, or do you think we'll have a bit of a go?
Well, 2 things. One, I don't know if you can ever say it's a good time to play somebody about a month after they just won the Community Shield.
And they're unbeaten.
And they're unbeaten. Like, to even get in the Community Shield, you've either won a league or a cup, about 4 months ago. So, take that with a slight pinch of salt. I mean, I do accept the point that, it's probably as good a time as we could have had to play them. but I still don't know if I'd call it good, just unqualified like that. But yeah, no, I mean, I think, they're an interesting team, aren't they? Because in some ways, they're set up perfectly to beat a team like Sunderland, where they're so strong and good at playing direct football themselves. They're not going to want to get embroiled in a possession battle. I think we're well set up, particularly to play teams who, a lot of teams like to have the ball for the sake of having the ball. A lot of teams who've, it's a wider debate, but the whole kind of copycat Pep syndrome that sort of swept English football over the past decade or so. And teams like that, I think we're quite well set up to play against. Whereas a team like Palace, I do think actually a lot of the things they're good at are things that we're bad at stopping. We saw it even last, and I know, look, obviously we're a much different team than last season in terms of the personnel, but it's still a Régis Le Bris team. And last season, we were at our worst when teams went long and direct against us and started, just getting the ball into dangerous areas quickly. Even some of the worst teams in the Championship last season, I mean, Plymouth hurt us doing this, particularly I think of the 2-2 at the Stadium of Light, where that equalising goal right at the end just came from get the ball in the box and make them panic. And Palace are a big, strong, physical team. And like I say, that's not to take away from their technical quality. They're a very skillful team as well, but they particularly have a lot of strength in areas that I do think can hurt us. So I think we've got to play the game very, very intelligently to be able to get around that. And some of that comes obviously from the team selections we'll have to make in terms of things like Lafayette on the left wing or Isidore up front, things that we can try and counter them with in specific ways. But also it's going to, if we're going to get anything out of this game, we're going to have to be physically bang at it. We're going to have to, match them stride for stride across the pitch in terms of pressing, in terms of, positionally from our defence in particular. They're going to get dragged from one side to the other and back and forth and back and forth. And they've got to be disciplined like nobody can believe through that game to make sure that at no point do, the gaps between centre-backs and full-backs need to stay consistent and all the rest of it, everything that goes into a good defensive performance, we've just got to be absolutely at it with no exceptions. It's a Premier League away game. So at the end of the day, you can't afford any passengers. Every player from 1 to 11 has to be performing either at their best or something near their best. But just on the Ipswich point, though, I take that point in the sense that Palace are kind of one of those teams in the Premier League that are a step above the relegation pack.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I think we're a much better team than Ipswich were last season.
Oh, yeah.
They will have experienced that gulf and gone, whoa, bloody hell, what is this? I feel like we're much more in the position where we'll go, whoa, bloody hell, that was a harder game. But it's not going to be shock, is it? You know what I mean? Le Bris is going to be under no illusions about the challenge that we face. And to be honest, I think this is quite an interesting game from the point of view that it'll tell us, I think, a lot more accurately where we really are. West Ham and Brentford, I think Gav said, took us a bit easy, and I think he was right. And the Burnley game, away game, their first home game, sort of back after promotion and all the rest of it, there's extenuating circumstances. This game will tell us a lot. If we get absolutely wiped off the park, we can start to worry a bit. If we beat them, then I think that lays down much more of a marker than getting a result against Brentford at home, with all due respect to Brentford.
Yeah. Well, it's prediction time. Gav, glass half full Henderson, as Johnny's anointed you. So but I think Johnny, I was about to make the same point as Johnny talking about, I think it's almost like the next start of the season. I feel like we had to get those 3 and everybody's still got question marks. Everyone's going, oh, Sunderland won their first 2, but 2 out of 3, but you seen who they played. It's almost like now the season gets going and now we're playing the teams who are winning the cups and finishing higher up the table. And I can't wait for this one, but how do you see it all playing out?
It's tough, isn't it? Because you look at what they've done already this season. I mean, they started with beating Liverpool in the Community Shield final. They drew away at Chelsea, which is a good result. They got a point against Forest, who are playing in Europe this season, and they battered Villa away. So they're not a bad side, are they? But then I kind of look at the play. They've lost Eza. There's the whole Gay thing, Wharton being injured. Haven't they got a couple of other injuries too?
Sar's injured.
Yeah, Sar, who's another really, important player for them. So there's part of us thinks, could this be not a good time to play Palace, but at the same time, it's not a bad time to play them, really. Right off the back of an international break with all that going on, it might be a good time to play them. And we're a completely different challenge to the teams they've already faced. Because for the first time, they're facing a team who, for all intents and purposes, we are beneath them, really. You know, they see themselves as an established club with better players, and all those things are true at the minute, unfortunately. So for the first time, they're facing somebody that they should beat. And that's a different type of pressure to the other games they've played in. They should have went away to Fredrikstad in the Conference League and won, and they didn't. So I kind of look at that and think, you know, what does that mean? So with all that said, I'm fancying a draw, 0-0.
Oh,
no, that's a good result. Is a draw?
Oh, yeah.
Is a draw and a clean sheet away at Palace not a good result? I mean, you mentioned before what Kevin Day said about them not scoring much. I don't know if that's especially true. I mean, he's a Palace fan, so I'll bow to his superior knowledge, but I'm just looking back at some of their recent results. Scored 3 against Aston Villa. They did score against Forest. They scored 2 goals in the Community Shield against Liverpool. And then even going back into last season, they put 4 past Wolves in the second last game of the season. They put 2 past Tottenham. They put 3 past Villa in the semi-final of the FA Cup. You know,
even Chelsea this season, they basically did score, but it got ruled out for somebody, you know, scratching a fingernail within a metre of the wall.
Yeah, so, you know, maybe that's just, I kind of got the impression from him, he's kind of glass half empty most of the time when it comes to football. Maybe that was just the tone of what he was saying. So yeah, look, they're going to be a threat, but 0-0, and I think it would be a great result. But there is a part of us thinks we might win this one, you know. Just, I can't get away from it. It's all set up, isn't it, for Brian Brobby coming off the bench with 10 minutes to go. Ball drops in the box. He spanks a foot at it. Runs away and celebrates the Sunderland
10 minutes. 10 minutes to go. It's a bit early for us, isn't it?
Well, yeah. Maybe 10 minutes of injury time to go.
Yeah, that's it. 99th minute.
Yeah. So yeah, I think we're going to come away and we're going to be pretty happy with how we've played. Whether that's a win or a draw, I don't know. We might even get beat, but do it honourably. I don't think you're going to get many games this season where Sunderland get battered and we're disappointed with how we played. Because even at Burnley, I was kind of like, well, you know, we weren't too bad. So yeah.
Well, Johnny, it's prediction time for you. And one thing we haven't mentioned is I think Crystal Palace have got the longest unbeaten record currently out of all the Premier League sides.
Records are there to be broken, Chris.
Going back into last season. But, you know, we're talking about the FA Cup holders, the Charity Shield winners. We're talking about a side who's 13 years in the Premier League. Are Gav and Ant being a bit optimistic that we're going to avoid defeat?
Yeah, I don't want to say what I'm about to say, but I think this is going to be the first time on one of these pods, or even back on the live Twitter spaces we used to predict all the time. I don't think I've ever predicted us to get beat. I do think this might just be sort of a level too high for us just at this point. You know, I think everything we've said about Palace and how well run they are and how well put together their squad is, and as well, you know, the others have mentioned it, but Glasner is a fantastic manager. I think he's sort of next cab off the rank in terms of the elite jobs. You know, I don't think it's going to be too long before he's managing a Champions League winning contender, if you know what I mean. So with all that in mind, I think it's going to be a defeat, but I think it'll be a narrow defeat because I agree with Gav. I think we're not going to disgrace ourselves in this game. I think the way that we play doesn't lend itself to nullifying Palace, but I do think it lends itself to being competitive in every away game, regardless of any other factor. So yeah, I can see it being a narrow defeat, maybe a 1-0 or a 2-1, possibly even decided by a set piece or something of that ilk. You know, I think it is going to be a tight game, but I just think Palace are going to have a little bit too much in the locker for us.
Can I just, since we've mentioned their unbeaten run, can I just end on some more positive facts going into this one? Or what? It's the first time we've played them since February 2017. We won 4-0 at Selhurst Park.
Oh yeah, brilliant game that.
We battered them. I think we scored all 4 in the first half as well.
Yeah, we did the second half with shit.
Yeah, and Allardyce was their manager as well. So it was the first time he'd come back to play against Sunderland. The away team has won 5 of the last 6 meetings in the Premier League between Palace and Sunderland. And 8 games between the sides. The only home win was in August 2013, where they won 3-1. And Sunderland have won 2 of 3 Premier League games this season, the first newly promoted side to win more than 2 games in their opening 3 matches since Leeds did it 4 years ago. And only 2 promoted clubs have started a Premier League season with 3 wins from the first 4 games. And that was Forest in 1994 and Bolton in 2001. So if we win this game, we're in pretty good stead there, I think, for a good start to the season.
And we've also won the last 3 consecutive games at Selhurst Park as well.
There you go.
So
when I said records are there to be broken, I didn't mean that record. I meant their unbeaten record. Yeah.
Just to end off, I'm going to stick my head on the block as well. So I'm going to go for a 2-1 win to Palace, but I agree with Gav that we're going to play well. It's going to give us lots of hope, and potentially a VAR decision goes against us, because would you want really basically? But there you go. Look, we've waffled far too much, so we'll call it a day, gents. Gav, thank you very much, mate. Good to hear your voice again.
Yes, thank you very much, everyone. I'm glad my throat held out.
Yes, and thank you very much, Johnny. And I'll need those contacts off you as soon as we finish.
Yeah, don't worry, mate. Just send us a message through, and I'll get you that blacklist.
Good stuff. Thank you very much, Johnny. And as I said, we've waffled for far too long, but it's a Saturday afternoon away game. If you want to just take any more in about this game, or just generally about the lads in general, we've had loads on this week. And if you want to take more in about the game, we've got Kevin Day, an interview with Kevin Day, who went out yesterday, author and comedian, who told us all about Palace and everything else from the Price of Football podcast as well, which was fantastic. We've been talking about it with all sorts of journalists this week, so you can soak it all in before kickoff if you would like to do so. But thank you again for everyone for listening. We really do appreciate it. Of course, we've got all of the action covered on the Roker Report website. We'll have updates on the socials, and hopefully we'll have a pod dropping very soon after the final whistle if everything works as it should. But from us, it's bye for now.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.